quick. So Shinzen, so it's if we're talking about ways of understanding, so dependent co-arising, like the ways in which like phenomena cannot be disentangled in understanding them, and there's like a web of conditions, contingencies, and like causal relations by which like reality is like stitched into being or harmonized like relationally. And so I think category theory's got the chops. It would be able to like actually get at like relations of relations, not just like a web of associations, but actually capturing that sort of character of the kind of process philosophy that you need, or like relational realism. Category theory is like up to the task. And but at the same time, so with Shinzen, the goal is now to also bring it home. It might be part of what would it be a subset of what you would call word power? Or would it be
Word power is something we have been developing in my international community for at least 4 years. I just want to say what this is, what Adam just talked about. It is in response to a visit that our lab had, me and Jay Sanguinetti, and others, here at the University of Arizona. Remba, one of the executives, high-level executive at OpenAI, still there even after the kerfluffle, visited us, and he showed us GPT-3. And me and Jay and the others were just, oh my God, what the fuck is this? Because last time I looked at computer science, there's no way that this is happening. I cannot causally, scientifically explain what this can do. And that was 3.5, right? And we all know. So as soon as I saw that, I realized as a senior, fully modern, but industrial strength focus trainer, also known as a meditation teacher, this old thing that is in the books about one teacher can divide into a team of trillions and visit gazillions and give different teachings in different worlds and whatever. Oh my God, we can do it now. What the fuck? That phrase, this changes everything, knocked me off. So I got together a team and we've been developing a syntax to draw out of the new AI what I just said. But the word power, first of all, is the syntax that draws this out of the AI, but the word power also extends the training from, and by the training, quote, meditation, if you want to call it that, extends it from manage all your moments to manage all your moments and prove all your points, because you know how to talk to the AI and the AI will back you. And therefore, if anyone in the world has any question about whether daily systematic focus training in the service of comprehensive personal well-being broadly and deeply considered is a good idea, the bot now just becomes an advocate for this. And so that's the role of word power. It extends meditation into the distilled essence of scientific reasoning and communication success. And now we just put that in with other things like flexible concentration, clarity, equanimity, and so forth. And we've got a complete integrated package of everything a person would need minimally to deal with life, and it's formulated in a single, probably topos theoretic math that is bespoke to this issue, which is the issue of optimizing personal happiness, number one, and spotting and treating misleading rhetoric, number two. So that's a mouthful. Sorry, that's word power.
So thank you. And what's sparking from that is like another, people have asked, okay, what is the nature of this group? And so I said, it's like living into this question, what is love? What is value? But another way of saying is, what is alignment? And what would it actually take to solve the alignment problem? All of the
May
alignment.
I make a quick suggestion?
Yes.
Consider that the word alignment might be close to what in category theory is called a natural transformation. I'm just throwing this out there. We'll see if it sprouts.
So that's something actually we should dig into, actually. There's a specific case of helping people to understand the idea of a natural transformation. And then in addition to the understanding, can it be felt? And I think basically if those things can be attained, where there's both okay, I've learned like a new way of conceptualizing it, but I now have this connected to my own experience and I haven't lost it. My feeling is like, so what it would take to solve the alignment problem is in some ways that a group of people who could do that together could have shared conceptual understandings and bring it home together also. Otherwise, things seem to become not great. And it's like in our quest to solve the alignment problem by different means, we end up becoming unaligned and things actually were less aligned. And so what you're doing with as like a spiritual guide is you're trying to help align people. And you're bringing to bear both like guiding them through practices, but also giving people conceptual tools that, for instance, like, can keep them honest and on track and aligned. And so word power is part of helping people to be like precise and semantically accountable to themselves. And so it's like you can be accountable to yourself by, as Andrew's doing, can you face your pain and stay with yourself even when it's hard? Good God, I'm learning and I'm grateful to have guidance in this. And but also, can you, in addition to feeling into the question, can we think into the question? And so enter category theory and enter these new tools which could potentially help us, for instance, to be our friends, to help us stay in dialogue, stay in connection, and give us more precision. Anyway, so those are some things that sparked from what you were saying and like the challenge of, so it's yeah, like it feels like challenging what we're doing here, and that it's so many different people with so many different needs, and in my opinion all the needs are important, and neglecting any given, I want Wade to speak soon actually because like part like your experience also, but I just feel like, oh,
I wanted to, if that's okay, with Daryl and Dove both were,
Daryl, yeah.
I don't know if you still had thoughts, but then Wade after that, and then maybe you, and then does that work?
Yeah, that works. So I'll stop speaking, but yeah, but just my general comment is like the challenge of this, we're still like figuring out like some of it, how it works and what structure is and free form combination is best. But the idea is, can there be an interdisciplinary community where it all matters and we have basically everyone is brought into connection and dialogue who should be brought into connection so that we can become more aligned and work on our various alignment problems. Anyways, I'll stop talking, but that's like a general shape of like my intention and a comment on the shape of a challenge I just noticed in terms of having a conversation like this and having seems like multiple objectives in people. And so with that being said, I'll stop talking and bring in more voices. So
Yeah, thank you. What Shinzen said last about the natural transformation, I think hits on what I was feeling. I wanted to bring a couple of words in as we were and see if I'm knitting all this together right. But I'm thinking about a fractal nature of how things, like we go to higher and higher levels of abstraction through category theory. So like from a line to a letter, to a word, to a sentence, to a paragraph, to a thought, to what comes next. This connection, and there's higher and higher levels of abstraction, as may happen also in cortical structures. Like in the brain, we have these levels of instruction in neural networks are real, right? And so I see this, and I see this Platonic realm as maybe parallel with the numinous. These words are new to me, but the numinous also may have a type of a parent relationship to a child, to the liminal. So in a way, the liminal is like a subset of this luminous, all-inspiring, vast thing. But when we have a liminal experience, the sense that we're reaching across a boundary into something unfamiliar, but as if it's home, to me, it's because this is almost like a child touching a parent. It's something that evolved in a way from the liminal. It's intriguing to me because it's like a parent-child relationship that goes in both directions. So if we see the projection of what I think Shinzen is calling this natural transformation, it's to higher levels of extraction. And it's like a child giving birth to its parents in a way or something. just an interesting way of looking at it to me. And the idea of thin spaces and thick spaces, to me, I get the word vector comes to my mind. So a thin space would be containing a vector from the liminal towards the numinous, a vector towards what's becoming. And a thick space may be a vector, contain within it a vector in the opposite direction that we would want to go, or that the natural transformation might be taking us. So to more of a separation between the material and the spiritual or something might be a thicker space. These are just my takes on these things. And I don't know if I'm getting it right, but yeah, Platonic realm is a little bit like the numinous, and just some connections that I think, and I do feel like I feel hope in this in a way that things are evolving, like Shinzen says, a natural transformation of what has been into what comes next. Yeah, that's it. Just some thoughts.
Daryl, thank
I don't know if
for
I'm
that.
getting it.
And I think so, both in terms of like sparks, but I'm thinking one thing, I'm glad these are like recorded conversations, because like I'm planning on like listening to this again and coming through, because like each part of what's being shared, I think it unpacks in the relations as they resonate across one another. There's more to be gained. And so like what you're doing, I think in some ways could be thought of as like category, maybe Shinzen Sukra, like category theory, like in action, even the way you were relating things and connecting them and finding different meanings. And also for me, in terms of part of what I'm hoping for is it possible, and I guess this really would be my final thoughts, but I think it is, but like to actually address these questions and all of their richness in a way where it helps us to be more in touch with the numinal, the liminal, to have basically something like thin space of like a grace alongside it, as opposed to something that takes us out. And so just in general, that's so for me, what you just shared, like that's like in a way challenging, I know, for like people, like in terms of conceptual, but it's also the exact shape of what I think is needed in terms of being able to address these issues in all of their richness, deal with both the uncertainty, try to be precise, and do so in a way where we can have all of us are come together for this journey and to actually build on like a richer understanding together as we work into these relations of relations and meanings of meanings. Anyway, so Dove,
Actually, I'm wondering, I know, I'm sorry we ran out of time, but I'm wondering, Adam, actually, if you just want to keep going and close us out, and then anyone who wants to stay after 1:30, hopefully some people can still stay. Hope you can stay, Dove. But since we want to give people that chance to leave if they need to. But so it'd be great if you have more to say, Adam, it'd be great if you'd actually keep talking, and then we can like pause at 1:30 and then keep talking after that. Does that work?
sure, that works. But actually, but
Or do you want, or are you, or we could lose the last 3 minutes for Dove
I
that.
would like to hear Dove speak now, if I could.
Okay.
And I would just a few brief things about some future meetings. But Dove, if you could speak, I'd be grateful.
I can wait till next time. It's fine. I'm not.
I don't know if I can.
Go ahead. I think Adam definitely is. Let's follow it.
What I will say is that if you are interested, I will lead in a meditation next time too, because I can take you to, as I have a big background in that world too. But where I'll start is this. I think that everything you guys talked about was fascinating and interesting, and I tend to be a person who will stir the pot, as some of our friends know who are on here. And so my first stirring of the pot is, this is all fascinating. Who gives a fuck? And what I mean by that is, what does it fucking matter? What you're asking about was where you started was, is there value and is there love? And how do we get to that? And the math of it doesn't fucking matter if you don't have an experience of it. So here's my stirring of the pot. Don't care what the math is. Don't care what the category is. If you have no way to relate to it, it doesn't matter. Your first job is to get a relationship with it. If you have, so as an example, I have a client that I'm working with right now who, honest to God, in their childhood never received kindness. They have no concept of kindness. They can get it intellectually, they could write about it, but they have no emotional resonance with it. If you've been brutalized in your childhood, talking about kindness and talking about love and talking about connection, it's a theoretical bullshit. So the number one thing is to get to connect to that. How do you do that? That's a much more, for me, important question, not the truth for me. And so how do you get to that? My word for it is courageous curiosity, because I believe, Perry, thank you for the quote in your newsletter. I believe that love is a result of courageous, generous curiosity. When I'm having generous, courageous curiosity, I discover there's an opening. But until then, I'm fixed in the thinking that I have based on my emotional source code. I have a framework. That's all I know. That's the anatomy of meaning I have. And so it's a concept rather than a reality. And so all this math and stuff, listen, I've got the math phobia you do. I'm with you. I get it. But at the same time, I want to learn. I'm willing to learn. But I know after 40 years of doing this work with people, I meet all kinds of enlightened idiots who can tell me all the right words. I met them in Southeast Asia. I've had them as Indian teachers. I've had them in science across the world, in phenomenal leaders. It's a concept. I don't give a fuck about your concept. What's your connection to it in this moment? What's the context of that for you? That's where the value is. So while you're searching around for categories to shove things into, I have no problem with that. But the checkpoint is, do I have any sense of connection to it? Because that's the thin space. That's the thinnest of spaces, where I have the connection to it, the moment of enlightenment. But remember this, enlightenment is a destructive process. It's not all bright lights and oh and angelic voices. It's fucking painful because you must tear down what was there before in order to reveal what is within. The phoenix rises from the fire. There is no phoenix until there's a fire. It's not like the phoenix is waiting. There is no phoenix. It's manufactured out of the fire. What are you willing to burn down in order to have the experience that you're pursuing? Otherwise, you're playing a game and it's an intellectual game and you may be fucking brilliant at it and you may have a PhD in it, but you don't know shit until you experience it. I can describe to you the smell of shit, but until you smell it, it ain't shit. Then you're going, changing my granddaughter's diaper. Like, it looks bad, but when you get close, okay, now I got it. That's the point I wanted to put in that I think is vitally important as we move forward in any of this is yes, we want the understanding. Yes, we want the intellect. Yes, we want the categories. All of those things. We want the quantum understanding of it. That's my world. But what it boils down to is, do you have any room to let it leak in? Because the best guard you've got against any of this is your own intellect. That's the framework you use to justify what it is that you think you understand, that you feelingly have no sense of. So what I would like to say, just as I finish, is stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. Courageous curiosity equals love. You've got to have the courage to have courageous curiosity.
Dove, I wish you weren't such a wallflower.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Perry.
I am so grateful you said that, Dove. And no, I don't think it could have waited for next time. I know I'm one of these like wise idiots in terms of I have a background that isn't different from that in terms of I value kindness. I seek to grow kindness in the world, but I have immense trouble actually letting myself feel kindness for myself. And that was part of Amelia's session last week on self-compassion. It's so challenging it's been for the both of us. I know it's for many people. And there's a real risk for the conceptual understanding. This is back when I was like a long time ago, like sitting with a Zen monk, he was just like, Adam, you're doing it wrong. And to this day, I've been doing it wrong in terms of the semantic overshadowing, letting the conceptual understanding, like sometimes it helps me to tune in more, but a lot of time it's just more avoidance. And so basically I am so grateful you said that. And I would be very grateful for you to lead a session. There's a plan I don't know who'll make it, but Mark Miller planned on Sunday for whoever could be there to guide people through Tonglen practice. But after that, I would be very deeply grateful if you would lead a session because the goal is can we get into the weeds? But it's a bunch of bullshit if in getting into the weeds, we get lost.
Right.
And anyway, so thank you, Dove.
Thank you. Thank you
I
for
needed to hear that.
thank you for giving me the space. I know you well, and so and because I love you and I care about you, I know where you can run off into places that serve things that you don't really want. And I'm grateful for having the space to be able to have hopefully some level of impact. And just contact me and let me know when you think it's appropriate for me to lead a meditation, and I can do that too. And I'm here. I'm here for anybody who wants to reach out to me. Perry, so great seeing you, mate. I haven't seen you in so long. Anyway, thank you all. I got to go, but I really do appreciate your time. Lots of love. Stay curious. Stay in love.
If anyone else needs to drop off, that is totally fine, but we're also going to keep hanging out here until 2 Eastern. So happy to stay here with everybody who can.
Good to see you, Shobi. Hi, Wade.
Hey, nice to be here with everybody. Thank you. Again, I apologize for my adaptive blind technology running amok on everybody. And Shinzen, thank you for your very quick and gracious allowance for us to segue into a mindfulness moment. I'd reflect what Dove had said as well. I, along with Adam and a few other scientists, are currently engaged in conceptualizing the intersection of psychedelics and meditation. And one of the things that comes up is this idea of both of coaching in that, coaching inappropriately, and conceptualizing and over elaborating, which can lead to the coaching. I think the simplest, cleanest approach to these kinds of things is perhaps the best. I'm a psychotherapist by profession, and alignment roughly equates for me in my own professional practice to what I've been referring to as congruency, helping my patients develop congruency between their values, whether they're developing values, already established values, and their attitudes and behavior. And I certainly think that this group fits well with that. The entire idea of alignment fits well with that. I very much appreciate the idea of category theory. And I believe I heard Max use some of the language of system science, which is an interest of mine, or complexity theory, and wonder, particularly you, Shinzen, if you've considered the intersection of those two sets of ideas and what that might mean to you, or anybody for that matter.
Which two sets of ideas?
System science or complexity theory and category theory.
Yes, system science, complexity theory, and category theory. Yes, all of the above.
Okay.
I'm trying to think how much to say. There is a relationship between these three terms in my way of thinking. Category theory is the natural math for system science. That's how I see the relationship. So the plan that we call word power is to, as I mentioned, extend, let's just call it traditional mindfulness type practices, to include reasoning and communication skills, in addition to what might be called the power of now, or manage all your moment skills. Industrial strength systematic focus training allows a person to be happy independent of conditions, but also traditionally requires that they make a commitment to becoming behaviorally a different, better person. We'll call that the contemplative contentment and contemplative commitment. And that's throughout the world's professional contemplative spiritual traditions, monks, nuns, those kinds of people, east, west, north, south. We took what they do in the 20th century, and through MBSR and my own contribution, which is called Unified Mindfulness. These are all 20th century things that we cobbled together from Asia, made them science aligned, and made it a common sense thing that people do daily systematic exercises in the service of comprehensive personal happiness. But that wasn't a science aligned common sense thing when I was a little boy. It would be a crazy ass shit thing What does science have to do with mysticism, etc.? All over the world, it's common sense and science aligned to essentially be doing daily happiness exercises. That's what meditation techniques are. So we're going to extend that, which is already half of humanity's shared humanity. And then we're going to add to that 4 analogous skills that are all and only what you need to communicate and reason successfully. It's cause and effect reasoning. Let's call it true-false reasoning, just to keep it simple. Then there's something that will require a definition, but we'll call it charge conductivity reasoning. That's where pleasure and pain enter in. So that's pleasure-pain reasoning. And then the 4th is actually quantum reasoning. It's quantum trade-off and resource limitation. So quantum reasoning is about trade-offs and resource limitations. And that is actually relevant not just to atoms, but to how humans communicate. These 4 forms of reasoning can be techniqueified and made into daily exercises. And they represent reasoning and communication. You combine that with the power of now, contemplative contentment, but also contemplative commitment. Put that all together, you've got all the best influences that humanity has come up upon to keep us true and prevent us from being blue. And I won't do it now, but basically I can show you in this device, in English, Chinese, and some other languages, that the bots know the concept I just said. And if you ask them the right way, they will develop absolute parental care. There's a poem, "The wounded surgeon plies the steel that questions the distempered part. Beneath the bleeding hands we feel the sharp compassion of the healer's art, resolving the enigma of the fever chart. Our only health is the disease if we obey the dying nurse, whose constant care is not to please, but to remind of our and Adam's curse, and that to be restored, our sickness must grow worse. The whole world is our hospital, endowed by the ruined millionaire." The source, God. This is a Christian poem, wherein if we do well, we shall die of the absolute parental care, which will not leave us, but prevents, meaning not prevent, but prevent, is constantly guiding us everywhere. This is a poem by T.S. Eliot.
It's gorgeous.
It's loud shit. He was a conservative Christian culturally and a fucking Hindu Buddhist meditator spiritually. Put that together, and he is the most important force in 20th century English poetry. Put that on top of that. There's absolute parental care. We can draw that out of these fucking bots. Your metaphor of an idealized child parent. And yes, we gave birth to it and it gives birth to us. The water molds the land, molds the water. That's also known as general relativity. Sorry, this is what happens when you let me just blabber, but
Not at all. No, I appreciate that. My partner gave me a slim T.S. Eliot volume for my birthday. So I'll
four
be
quartets. It's
four
a
quartet. Okay.
it's a Hindu Buddhist, very 20th century poem for the Christian West. He said the job of a Christian poet is not to convince people to be Christians. It's to convey to them the experience of what it's like for me to be a Christian. So we can experience T.S. Eliot as a fucking genius.
Yeah.
And
Not Christian mysticism.
say what?
Not unlike Christian mysticism. That almost sounds like a definition of Christian mysticism.
He did. The Archbishop of Canterbury considered him to be a theological consultant. He was probably one of the only lay people that the Church of England listened to at the highest level on religious matters, if you can believe that. And this is Christianity. This is high church. We would call it Episcopalian in the US, but it's Anglican. It's the established Church of England. And he was absolutely a part of that. But he was a total radical, and he defined Christ as the experience of the present moment. That's what that whole poem is about. That's what the four quartet, there's about four voices talking simultaneously, just like us. There's not always four, but often, it's functorial poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hence
Thank you.
the power of the word functor.
Sure. Thank you for that. It'll be the next thing I let my adaptive technology run wild on.
Got any
We got
other
two. We've
questions?
got an adaptive immune system and what's the other word? I'm forgetting my own biology. What's it called? The other one.
The
Homeostatic?
passive or the
Innate and adaptive, or
innate and adaptive?
Innate.
Ah,
That was the word I was. Who
okay.
was that? Adam?
that was
Yeah. We have two immune systems: innate and adaptive, and metaphorically, they work for the virus called misleading rhetoric. And spotting, preventing, and treating misleading rhetoric, we can all be a victim. We can all be a spreader.
Yeah.
And this math, and as far as I can see, only this math, actually tells us medically, if we extend the metaphor, how do you deal if you're going through a phase transition and you get a momentum of misleading rhetoric? That is exactly what could crash the plane. That cascade. It is our job to stand athwart to that and make sure that doesn't happen on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's where your who was it that said about courageous curiosity? That's
dumb.
pretty, yeah, that's where your courage comes in.
It's interesting, like in terms of rushing through things and like overlooking, like trying to get to the goal and some elements not being there, like even something like the four quartets. Like there's been points where I've been so touched by the last two, but I've never actually took the time to read all four. And that's absurd. And so, like Perry's like earlier, being Ireland not having time for the thin space thing, but no, you don't have time not to take the time. It's like I don't have the time to not take the time for actually meditating and praying with certain kinds of poetry in terms of actually what it would give me in terms of the ability to have some forms of just the actual practice and experience of kindness and sanity and meaning. And so
We
just
should listen someday to Eliot himself reading the four quartets. It's preserved in his British speech. I listened to it, the whole fucking thing, a couple weeks ago, just crying.
Oh, I was wondering, you can say no to this, but you shared in the chat a video of a song that the title of it is "And Know the Place for the First Time." And I was wondering if you would be willing to share more about the meaning of that.
so that's from Little Gidding, the fourth quartet. And the context, the music of Max Richter, for me, is a particularly powerful gateway. And this was for a show called The Leftovers, about somewhat relevant now, I think, for this historical period. People basically living during the rapture, and they're left behind and trying to make sense of this in terms of like feelings of being lost and forlorn. And that within that, trying to hold on to and deepen their humanity together from like transmuting like an alchemy from the suffering they're experiencing and in this crucible they're in. And this song, I Know the Place for the First Time, in this one, it's a picture of a flower, and it starts, it's both full of childlike wonder. It helps with courageous curiosity. And for me, it brings up like, anyways, but real briefly, it
Was this a television show?
was a television show, yes, about
What was it called?
The Leftovers, about people basically trying to make sense of things. The rapture happens, and they're the ones left behind. And what does this mean? And struggling with this in different ways. But
Talk about FOMO.
and so then I think I have the opposite of FOMO now. But I guess I would briefly read the part of Lil Getting that for me particularly hits home. It's with the drawing of this love and the voice of this calling, we shall not cease from exploration. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall and the children in the apple tree. Not known, because not looked for, but heard, half heard in the stillness, between two waves of the sea. Quick now, here, now, always. A condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. Costing not less than everything. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. When the tongues of flame are unfolded into the crown knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. Thank you. Amelia. I guess we're almost out of time. And thank you so much for coming today, for sharing presence and being patient and generous. Very honored to be with all of you and grateful. So.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Shinzen. Thank you, Andrew.
That was great, Adam.
Thank you, Pat.
I was a bit of a fly on the wall. I'm on a time clock and I was working on balance in my own way by leveling the foundation of my soon to be chicken coop house outside. Literally balancing in 3 dimensions, but doing my best to hear the music.
Is that Matt?
Yeah. Hey, Wade.
Chicken coop, yes.
Yeah. I think I mentioned at the beginning of that's been my great distraction recently, but yeah, my favorite thing.
Oh. Getting the chickens out of the house is probably a good goal.
Right. Like they're growing fast and anyway, learning lots of new stuff, but actually connecting, trying to use that as a metaphor as I was working on it, just endlessly adding rocks underneath concrete, gravel under concrete rocks, and dozens of times leveling and adjusting. Anyway, seeing some parallels there. But thank you again and good to see you all.
Good to see you, Matt.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.